I got a call at 6 in the morning. One of my clients, a 71-year-old man I'd been caring for, had passed away in his sleep. His daughter was on the other end of the line, and I could hear the devastation in her voice. She kept saying the same thing over and over. Why him? We just talked yesterday. He was laughing. I wasn't surprised. And I need to tell you why. In my 15 years of doing this work, I've been the person who arrives in the morning. I found clients who didn't wake up. I've sat with families in emergency rooms after midnight calls. I've held hands at bedsides when the monitors started slowing down. And through all of that, I've learned to recognize patterns, small bedtime habits that seem completely harmless but create genuine risk after 70. This isn't theory. This is observation. I was there. If you're watching this and you're lying awake at 3 in the morning, wondering if that chest tightness you felt tonight means something, I want you to know your instinct to pay attention is right. Your body is trying to tell you something. And the fact that you're here, looking for answers, tells me you're someone who listens to those quiet warnings. If you're watching this about a parent or someone you love and you can't shake the feeling that something isn't right even though they seem fine during your visits, that feeling deserves to be taken seriously. You're not overreacting. You're not being paranoid. You're paying attention in a way that matters. I'm not here to frighten you. I'm here because I've sat with too many families who said the exact same words. We had no idea. Why didn't anyone warn us? He seemed fine. And I've carried those conversations with me because I believe you deserve to know what I've observed. Not so you lie awake at night, terrified, but so you have awareness while there's still time to make different choices. The man who passed away, I'll call him Robert. I use a different name to protect his privacy, but his story is real. He was 71, a retired postal worker. When I started caring for him about 6 months before he died, he was independent, sharp, proud. He had that kind of gruff warmth some men of his generation carry, didn't want help but appreciated the company. His daughter lived about 2 hours away. She visited most weekends. She'd arrive Saturday morning and they'd have breakfast together. She'd help him with errands, check his medications, make sure the house was in order. And when she left Sunday afternoon, she saw a father who seemed stable, maybe a little slower than he used to be, maybe a little more tired, but basically fine. But I was there every weekday evening. And what I saw in those hours, the things that happened when the lights went down and the routines took over, told me a very different story. There were patterns forming, habits that seemed harmless on the surface but were creating stress his body couldn't handle anymore. I tried to mention it, gently, but Robert would wave me off. I'm just tired, he'd say. I'm fine. And his daughter, seeing him on weekends when he was rested and putting his best foot forward, didn't see what I was seeing in those evening hours. The night he died, there was no dramatic event, no heart attack that woke him gasping, no fall, no crisis. His heart simply couldn't handle the combined stress his bedtime routine was creating. It gave out quietly while he slept. And that's what haunts me, because the patterns I saw, the habits that contributed to what happened, they're not unique to Robert. I've watched them in so many of the seniors I've cared for. Small choices made every single night that seem completely normal but create hidden risk after 70. If you're finding this helpful, I'd love to know you're here. Leave a comment below to let me know this is reaching the people who need it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I share insights like these every week from my 15 years of working with seniors. Now let me tell you what I saw in Robert's evening routine that his family never knew about. Robert was the kind of man who didn't want fuss, independent, proud of it. When I first started caring for him, he'd meet me at the door with a firm handshake and that gruff warmth some men of his generation carry. Don't need much help, he'd say. Just nice to have the company. And during the day, you'd believe him. He could make his own lunch. He'd read the paper cover to cover. He kept his mind sharp with crossword puzzles. His daughter would call most evenings around 7, and I'd hear him on the phone, laughing, telling her about his day, asking about his grandkids. To anyone listening to those conversations, Robert sounded like a man doing just fine. But I was there in the hours after those phone calls, the hours when the routines took over, and what I witnessed in those evening hours told me a very different story. Around 8:30 every night, Robert would heat up whatever his daughter had prepared for him over the weekend. Big portions, pot roast with potatoes, lasagna, meatloaf with all the sides, the kind of meals that stick with you. He'd eat at the kitchen table, and I'd notice he was eating faster as the months went on. Less conversation, more urgency to finish and get to the next part of his routine. By 8:45, he'd be at the bathroom counter, and this is where I'd watch something that troubled me every single time. He'd line up his pill bottles, blood pressure medication, a diuretic, a sleep aid, sometimes 4 or 5 bottles total, and he'd take them all at once, one after the other, with barely a sip of water from the small cup he kept by the sink. I tried suggesting he spread them out, take them with more water, maybe take some earlier in the day, but he'd wave me off. Been doing it this way for years, he'd say. Works fine. Then he'd head to the thermostat. Robert was always cold, always. He'd set it to 78 degrees before bed, sometimes even 80. I'd walk into his bedroom to help him get settled, and the heat would hit me like a wall. Dry, heavy, the kind of heat that makes it hard to breathe deeply even when you're healthy. And finally, he'd get into bed, completely flat, no elevation, no extra pillows. I'd hear him settle in, and within minutes, I'd hear his breathing change. It would get shallower, more labored. Sometimes he'd shift positions, trying to find comfort, but he refused to adjust. I've always slept flat, he'd tell me. Can't sleep any other way. His daughter saw a father who seemed stable. She'd arrive Saturday morning and find him rested, showered, ready for the day. She'd check his pill organizer and see that he'd taken everything. She'd feel the warm house and think he was keeping comfortable. She'd ask how he was sleeping, and he'd say fine, just fine. But I was there every weekday evening. I saw the swelling in his ankles getting progressively worse over those 6 months. I heard the breathing getting more strained. I watched him start to move slower in the mornings, like his body needed more time to recover from the night. I tried to bring it up, gently, carefully. Robert, have you mentioned the swelling to your doctor? He'd look down at his feet and shrug. It's nothing, just getting old. Or I'd say, you sound like you're working pretty hard to breathe at night. Maybe we could try propping you up a little. And he'd give me that look, the one that said he appreciated my concern but didn't want to admit something might be wrong. I'm just tired, he'd say, every time. I'm fine. But I knew he wasn't fine. I've watched this pattern before. I knew what it meant. After 70, your body processes things differently. Medications that worked fine for years can start building up in your system when you take them all at once, especially with minimal water, especially right before lying down. Heavy meals late at night force your body to digest while your heart rate is trying to slow down for sleep. It's working against itself. Overheated rooms stress your cardiovascular system when it's trying to rest. And lying completely flat when you're having any kind of breathing difficulty means your heart has to work harder to circulate blood and oxygen through your body all night long. Each one of these habits on its own might seem manageable, but together, night after night, they create a cumulative stress that builds over time. The night Robert died, there was no dramatic event, no heart attack that woke him gasping for air, no fall, no emergency. His daughter found him the next morning when she came for her usual Saturday visit. He looked peaceful, she said, like he'd just drifted off. But what actually happened was his heart simply couldn't handle the combined stress anymore. The medication timing, the late heavy meal, the overheated room, the flat position straining his already compromised breathing. His body had been working overtime every single night to compensate, and eventually it couldn't keep up. And that's what I need you to understand. These aren't rare habits. I've seen them in so many of the homes I've worked in. Small patterns that seem completely normal, even comfortable, but create hidden risk after 70. Let me walk you through the 4 bedtime habits I've observed creating hidden risk after 70. These aren't rare patterns. I've seen them in dozens of homes. And what troubles me is how completely normal they seem until you understand what's actually happening in the body during those nighttime hours. The first habit is taking all your medications right before bed. I've watched so many seniors do exactly what Robert did. Line up 4, 5, sometimes 6 pill bottles on the bathroom counter and take them all at once with barely any water before lying down. After 70, your body processes medication differently. Your kidney function changes. Your liver metabolizes things more slowly. Medications that worked fine when you took them all together at 40 or 50 can start building up in your system at 70. And when you take them right before lying down with minimal water, some of those pills can get stuck in your esophagus or stomach, creating concentrated doses that hit your system all at once instead of absorbing gradually the way they're meant to. I cared for 2 men who both took multiple medications for similar conditions. One of them, I'll call him William, spaced his medications throughout the day. Morning pills with breakfast, afternoon pills with lunch, only his sleep aid at night. The other man took everything at bedtime because it was easier to remember. One routine. The difference in their nighttime stability was striking. William slept soundly. The other man would wake up disoriented, sometimes dizzy, his blood pressure dropping too low during the night because all his medications were peaking at the same time. The second habit is eating large, heavy meals late at night and going straight to bed. This isn't just about heartburn, though that's part of it. I've watched this contribute to something far more serious: breathing issues and aspiration risk during sleep. When you lie down with a full stomach, especially after 70 when your digestive system is slower, your body is trying to process all that food while your heart rate is dropping for sleep. Your body is working against itself. The diaphragm can't move as freely because the stomach is pressing up against it. If you have any reflux, you're at risk for food or acid coming back up while you're sleeping flat. And your heart is under extra stress trying to pump blood to your digestive system while everything else is trying to slow down for rest. I remember a woman I cared for who loved her late dinners. She'd eat at 9, be in bed by 9:30. She'd wake up multiple times a night feeling like she couldn't catch her breath. Her doctor couldn't figure out why until we started tracking when she ate. Once she moved dinner to 6:30, the nighttime breathing episodes stopped almost completely within a week. The third habit is keeping the bedroom too warm. I understand this one completely. After 70, you feel cold more easily. Your circulation isn't what it used to be. So you turn up the heat, you pile on blankets, you want to feel comfortable. But here's what I've learned: your body actually needs to cool down slightly to sleep well and safely. When you're sleeping in a room that's 78 or 80 degrees, your cardiovascular system has to work to regulate your body temperature all night long. Your heart rate stays elevated. You don't get into the deeper, more restorative stages of sleep. And if you already have any heart or breathing concerns, that extra work adds up over 8 hours of sleep, night after night. The fourth habit is sleeping completely flat when you have any kind of breathing difficulty or heart concerns. This is the one I wish I could tell every senior about. Even 2 or 3 inches of elevation can make a profound difference. When you're flat, your heart has to work harder to pump blood through your entire body against gravity. If you have any fluid retention, any breathing issues, any heart strain, that flat position makes everything harder. I've watched seniors go from waking up gasping for air multiple times a night to sleeping peacefully just by adding 1 extra pillow or putting blocks under the head of their bed. I'm not sharing this to make you lie awake at night worried. I'm sharing it because these patterns are so common, And most people have no idea they're creating cumulative stress on the body. If you're recognizing any of these habits in your own routine, I want you to know this isn't about blame or failure. These are things most people do because they seem logical and comfortable. But after 70, what worked before may need adjusting. And if this is resonating with you, I'd really appreciate if you'd comment below with the number 70 to let me know this information is reaching the people who need it most. Now, let me tell you what I've seen work when people make changes to these patterns. I need to tell you why I share this information, why I left institutional care to make these videos, why I keep talking about patterns most people would rather not think about. I've held too many hands at memorial services. I've sat in funeral homes with families who kept asking the same questions over and over. Why didn't we see this coming? Was there something we should have noticed? Why didn't anyone warn us? And the truth is, someone did try to warn them, usually me. But the warnings came too late, or too quietly, or got brushed aside because nobody wants to believe their loved one is at risk. I share this because I've heard too many families say, "We had no idea." And I've carried those words with me for years now. Every client I lost, every preventable decline I witnessed, every family sitting in shock because the signs were there but nobody taught them what to look for. That's why I left institutional care. I was tired of watching the same patterns play out and feeling powerless to change them. In facilities, I could only care for the people assigned to me. I could only warn the families who happened to be there when I was working. But here, doing this, I can reach people before the crisis happens. I can share what I've learned while there's still time to make different choices. If you're watching this as a senior, I want to speak directly to you for a moment. Your body is still working to keep you safe. It's been doing that job your entire life. But after 70, it needs you to work with it, not against it. The bedtime habits we talked about, they're not your fault. Nobody told you that what worked fine at 50 might create risk at 75. You've been doing your best with the information you had, but now you have new information, and that's powerful. You know your own body better than anyone else. If you've noticed changes, if you're waking up more tired than you used to, if breathing feels harder at night, if your ankles are swelling more, those observations matter. They're not paranoia. They're not complaining. They're your body trying to communicate with you, and you deserve to have that communication taken seriously. These changes I've talked about aren't complicated. Talk to your doctor about when to take your medications. Move dinner earlier. Adjust your thermostat down a few degrees. Add a pillow. Small adjustments. But they matter more than most people realize. You still have agency over your health. You still have time to make choices that protect you. If you're watching this about a parent or loved one, I see you too. I know the guilt you carry. I know you feel like you should be there more, should notice more, should do more. But you can't be there every moment. You can't notice everything. And that doesn't make you a bad son or daughter. It makes you human. What you can do is share what you've learned. You don't have to approach this as a confrontation. You don't have to say, "I'm worried you're going to die in your sleep." You can say, "I watched something today about sleep safety. Can we talk about it?" You can offer to help them adjust their routine. You can be curious instead of critical. You can make it about trying something together rather than fixing something broken. And if you notice signs, the swelling, the labored breathing, the increased fatigue, you can trust your instincts enough to mention them to their doctor. Sometimes the person living in their body every day doesn't notice the gradual changes the way someone who sees them weekly can. Before we finish, if you found this helpful and you'd like to see more content like this, I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe. I share what I've learned from 15 years of caregiving because I believe this information can save lives, and I want to make sure it reaches the people who need it most. The later years of life can be some of the most peaceful and meaningful if we approach them with awareness and intention. I've witnessed that too. I've cared for people in their 80s and 90s who were sharp, engaged, thriving. The difference wasn't luck. It was paying attention, making adjustments, working with their changing bodies instead of against them. You deserve that kind of later life. Peaceful sleep, safe routines, time with the people you love, and I believe you can have it, not by denying that things change after 70, but by understanding how they change and adapting thoughtfully. These changes aren't complicated, but they matter more than most people realize. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, you're not alone in this. I'll see you in the next one.